What's happening around the world and what's happening here at home. A very good evening to and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sandro Ferdinando. Let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Social Security Contribution Levy Bill tabled in Parliament is flawed. A revelation from Dr. Harsha De Silva.
Legal draftsman make a Sanduda Udema correction like a Kerala, may Parliament or Sound Ewalu. Sound Ewata, Sabagata Karla Diene, Eopueka Nemelu.
UN Human Rights Chief calls to end the reliance on draconian security laws and crackdowns on peaceful protest. Frontline socialist leaders respond to the president's allegations. Who is responsible for the Chinese fertilizer deal that cost Sri Lanka $6.9 million? Parliamentarian Rasamanikyam proposes to allow the youth to lead the country. We never take an opposition lightly. Indian skipper Rohit Sharma's post-match comments.
No, normally in Indian media.
I don't believe in favorites and underdogs and all of that. I mean, all the teams that are playing here are quality teams.
First up in news here at home, it was revealed in Parliament today that the Social Security Contribution Levy Bill that was produced to the House was marred with errors. Although the bill was supposed to be passed without a debate in Parliament yesterday, it was decided to hold a debate tomorrow as opposition members indicated that a debate was necessary.
Social Security Contribution Levy Bill was proposed in the 2022 budget presented by then Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa. This tax is to be levied at a rate of 2.5% if the annual turnover is over 120 million rupees on the taxable turnover of importers, manufacturers, service providers and wholesalers and retailers. Yesterday, NPP leader Anukumara Dissanayake and SJB Dr. Harsha De Silva pointed out that the Social Security Contribution Levy Bill aims to impose a tax in addition to the already existing VAT. Concerns were raised in Parliament on real estate being omitted from the Social Security Contribution Levy Bill.
Yesterday
evening, officials from Parliament and the Treasury contacted me and informed me about an error. They said the real estate was not taken off the Social Security Contribution Levy Bill. They said it was an error during the translation process. They said that they became aware of it on Monday and the Treasury immediately sent it to the legal draftsman and it was sent to Parliament on the same day after making the corrections. Although the corrected version was sent to Parliament on Monday, it was not the document that was tabled in Parliament. What was tabled in Parliament was the bill with the error. Around 300 copies were printed and distributed, and until I raised this, no one was even aware of such an error. If a document with an error was tabled in Parliament, it must be taken seriously. If these were not the true amendments, and if separate amendments were tabled, the Parliament needs to be made aware of how it happened. The Parliament staff distribute these documents in the morning and we accept them as flawless documents. We will have to raise concerns about non-accuracy of any amendment. MP Harsha De Silva said he was informed about this over the phone, but they could have at least informed the Speaker or me because it was I who tabled it. This needs to be looked into.
මම සභානායක මේ පනත ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා මටවත් කියන්න බෑ මට නොකියු දෙයක් ගිහලා හර්ෂ සිල්වා මැතිතුමාට කියලා දෙනවා ඔබතුමා කරුණාකරලා මේක ගැන පරීක්ෂණයක් කරන්න මේක උනේ කොහොමද කියලා හරි ප්‍රශ්නේ
ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම මට දැනුම් දීලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ මම ආණ්ඩුවේ ඇමති කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි මේ කට්ටියට දැනුම් දෙන්න ඕනේ
අපි හර්ෂ සිල්වා මැතිතුමා කියන විදිහට වැරදි සංශෝධනයක් ගෙනාවා නම් ඒක සම්මත වුණා නම් මේක මහ බරපතල වැරද්දක්.
Leader of the Frontline Socialist Party, Kumar Gunratnam, responded to the allegations made against his party by President Ranil Wickremesinghe during the 76th convention of the United National Party.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා කියනවා මේ ප්‍රචණ්ඩත්වයක් ගැන. ඒෝගේ අපේ පක්ෂයේ නම සඳහන්.
Ranil Wickremesinghe referred to our party as the frontline group while expressing his views on violence. We vehemently condemn the statements that hold the Frontline Socialist Party for one that is involved in violence. We see this as a political attempt to prevent one's inability from being exposed to the people and to direct the people away from one's political failure. We are aware of the moment violence arose at the Aragalaya. Ranil Wickramasinghe's language is suppression with the SLPP. Those responsible for the 9th May violence have not been brought to book, but via allegations being made against the FSP. If you think wisely, they need to suppress the Aragalaya as the aspirations of the people have not been realized. This is just another weak attempt to move us away from the Aragalaya's demands through the means of intimidation. We will not bow down to such attempts.
කවට පාලයුගේ නිවට මර්ධනය ප්‍රචණ්ඩත්වය ගැන බියවද්දලා අපිව මේ අරගලයේ මූලික දේශපාලන අරමුණු වලින් ඈත් කරන්න උත්සාහ කරන්න එපා. ඒක දුර්වල උත්සාහයක්. අපි මේ මර්ධනය මේ නිවට මර්ධනය ඉදිරියේ දනගහන්නෙත් නෑ.
TNA MP Shanakya Rasamanikam says it's time the country was governed by a youth group.
We can see how a young cricket team is taking Sri Lanka cricket forward. I also request the people of this country to hand over Sri Lankan politics to the youth. It is only the youth who can take this country in a new direction. I request the people to hand over the country to the youth, just like our cricket team. The Sri Lankan people are becoming malnourished, and those responsible for the economic collapse must be held accountable. A new political drama is on place since last week. I was overseas last week, and when I saw the news, I saw the groups that were responsible for the current political crisis in Sri Lanka. I witnessed the formation of something called the Supreme Sri Lanka Coalition. When you take a look at the group, their frontrunners are the people who said a person like Mahathir Mohamad and Lee Kuan Yew would build this country. Now they blame the leader for taking a break with his grandson as the cause of the crisis. The secretary of this movement is a man who took a sword and walked out. The man branded as a raw agent who said Indian investments will destabilize the country is the secretary. In addition, the man who leveled allegations against Dr. Shafi is a deputy secretary. The man who said the IMF will lead to a disaster is another deputy chairman. This is why I call for the youth to be given to lead this country. The people should not fall for the charades of these men again.
A UN report compiled during the tenure of the outgoing UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, has drawn attention to a series of concerns in Sri Lanka.
The nation's High Commissioner for Human Rights encourages the international community to support Sri Lanka in its recovery, but also in addressing the underlying causes of the crisis, including impunity for human rights violations and economic crimes. For sustainable improvement, however, it is vital to recognize and assist Sri Lanka to address the underlying factors which have contributed to this crisis, including embedded impunity for past and present human rights abuses, economic crimes and corruption. The High Commissioner also underscores the importance of addressing the underlying governance factors and root causes which have contributed to this crisis, and she has highlighted in previous reports. The report calls on the government to immediately end the reliance on draconian security laws and crack down on peaceful protests, reverse the drift towards militarization and show renewed commitment to and deliver on security sector reform and ending impunity. It adds that while the security forces recently showed considerable restraint in response to mass protests, the government has since taken a harder line approach, arresting such student leaders under the Prevention of Terrorism Act and violently suppressing peaceful protests. The report also notes that a heavily militarized environment and culture of surveillance also continues in the north and the east of the country. The report urges the new government to relaunch a comprehensive and victim-centered strategy on transitional justice and accountability with a time-bound plan to implement outstanding commitments, including taking steps in relation to the establishment of a credit truth-seeking mechanism and an ad hoc special court. Expressing concern about the lack of progress to establish the truth about the Easter Sunday bombings in 2019, the report also calls for a follow-up, independent and transparent investigation with international assistance and the full participation of victims and their representatives to pursue further lines of inquiry. The Human Rights Council will hold its 51st regular session on the 12th of September to the 7th of October at the Palais des Nations in Geneva.
A council visited the convener of the Inter-University Bhikkhu Federation, Venerable Galwavi Siri Dhamma Thero today. The Thero, detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, is held at the Tangol Detention Centre.
The Venerable Thero revealed to me that statements were recorded on the 24th and 25th of August and thereafter 6 days later, which was yesterday and today. They had questioned the Venerable Thero yesterday and today for around half an hour on a phone call made in 2021. What this shows us is the 90-day detention is being used as a tool to isolate this individual from society. The Prevention of Terrorism Act is being used as a tool to hunt down those who expressed dissent or protested against the government in the recent past.
කරපු රජයට විරුද්ධව අදහස් පළ කරපු පිරිස් දඩමීම කරන්න නැත්නම් මෙල්ල කරන්න පාවිච්චි කරන මෙවලමක් හැටියට ත්‍රස්තවාදී ලක්ෂණ පනත අරගෙන තියෙනවා.
Several members of the Aragalaya were back at the Criminal Investigations Department today.
Several activists from the Aragalaya People's Protest were questioned by the Criminal Investigations Department today, and two of them were summoned at 9 a.m. to the CID to record statements. I am not aware of the reason. I have been to the police and the CID over 6 times. I was not issued any notice. On Monday, the Bellavatta police delivered a message to my residents with no clear information. They should not waste time. There are far more serious issues than this in the country. I will visit the police, even if they make a call or send a message. I will not be in hiding. I am charged with entering the Prime Minister's office and looting. As far as I am aware, I only had the national flag in my hand. I was on top with the Sri Lanka army soldiers. They are the ones who pulled us up. The army told us to enter the premises, and that is why we went in. We did not break into the premises.
සියලුම දෙනා ඇතුළට ගියේ. එහෙම නැතුව මේ කඩාගෙන බින්දගෙන ගහගෙන කරගෙන කුඩු කරගෙන ගියේ නෑ. මේ වෙනකොට එදා මේ 9 ප්‍රහාරයේදී
Some of those who were injured on the 9th of May were discharged from the hospital recently. Some of their residents are surrounded as if they committed murders and rape. We are well aware of the scams committed by the former ministers, including the bond scam. With no investigation on those scams, they are investigating the youth who stepped out to secure their future. The man who tried to save Ranil Wickremesinghe's dog is also behind bars. The man who was taking home a packet of cereal was also put behind prison and is charged with stealing it from Ranil Wickremesinghe's house. Is this not a joke?
හිටපු කෙනත් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා නිවසින් සම්පෝෂ ගෙනාව කියලා ඇතුළට දාලා තියෙනවා. මං අහන්නේ මේවා විහිළු නෙවෙයිද?
Meanwhile, human rights officials visited Kurunegala today to inspect the site where a young boy died in a storm drain.
The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka is currently investigating the tragic death of 14-year-old Sajida Gunaratna from Kurunegala, who died after he was trapped inside a storm drain in the Kurunegala town. He met with the tragedy while returning home from school. Investigators from the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka visited the site of the tragedy and recorded statements. Kurunegala residents pointed out that there were similar death traps along the road where the tragedy took place during a downpour on Monday. The final rites of the late Sajida Gunaratna took place today evening.
මෙයා බයයිනේ කරුවලට. මෙයා රෑවෙද්දි කරුවලට බයයි. අනේ මේ චූටි මාල් කැකුල දාලාද අපි මේ යන්නේ අප්පා.
IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva says that Sri Lanka is among the countries where the debt situation is no longer sustainable. She was speaking at the Africa Adaptation Summit at the Global Center on Adaptions in the Netherlands.
So Amina's call on us to embrace that hope of humanity coming together in the most testing moments. This is what I do from my heart indoors. We are also recognizing that these shocks have exhausted our people. People are tired of the pandemic, and now they are hit a second time with inflation. In many countries, the fiscal space is gone. When you look at the debt situation for 25% of emerging markets, that is no more sustainable. Just think of Sri Lanka and many countries that are in this position. Actually, we see a country, a strong economy with strong fundamentals like Ghana in a situation in which it is harder to tap into markets because of these exogenous shocks. And for poor countries, it is over 60% that are in that distress. So when I look at this picture, what is the conclusion? No more we can think of our economies as relatively simple mechanisms in which, as long as we have the banking sector and financial stability, they function. Remember, after the 2009 crisis, we did something very wise. We regulated the banking sector. It is now more resilient. But that concept of resilience has to expand to be a comprehensive one. We need resilient people that are educated, that are healthy, and have sound social protection under their feet. We need not just resilient economies, we need resilient societies in which people feel that they belong, that there is fairness, that there are jobs for them. And we need our resilient planet.
Sri Lanka is facing the worst economic crisis since its independence in 1948 and now awaits the initial disbursements under the International Monetary Fund's staff-level agreement. Why is Sri Lanka in this crisis, and most importantly, who is responsible for it? Fraud, corruption and waste too have played a key part in leading Sri Lanka to a crisis. Tonight, News First takes a look back at the dark deals that led to a complete waste of public funds.
In April 2021, the Sri Lankan government took a sudden decision to completely ban chemical fertilizer imports to turn the island nation's agriculture sector 100% organic. Not only did the experts warn about the consequences of such a policy, even farmers pointed out that it would carry Sri Lanka to the brink of destruction. However, given the forex crisis faced by the country, Sri Lanka decided to ban chemical fertilizer imports. But did Sri Lanka manage to save its reserves by banning chemical fertilizer? Or did it lose whatever remaining dollars it had in its reserves over a shady deal? The country eventually paid $6.9 million to a Chinese fertilizer shipment, although not a single scoop of fertilizer touched Sri Lankan farmlands. China's Qingdao Seaweed Biotech Group, that produces organic fertilizer using seaweed, came forward to supply organic fertilizer to Sri Lanka after applying for it via an open tender. Although the tender was awarded to Qingdao Seaweed Biotech Group, Sri Lanka's National Plant Quarantine Service, after conducting tests twice, confirmed that the fertilizer samples contained a pathogen. However, an order was already placed for 20,000 metric tons of organic fertilizer shipment that was shipped aboard the Hippo Spirit vessel without approval from the National Plant Quarantine Service. In order to obtain the license to import fertilizer to Sri Lanka, it is paramount to obtain clearance from the National Plant Quarantine Service. In the end, the Hippo Spirit changed its vessel name, disappeared from satellite tracking systems for days while remaining stationary in the Sea of Sri Lanka, and later turned back to its port of origin. However, the deal regarding the Chinese fertilizer shipment is far from over. As per the agreement the supplier had reached with Sri Lanka, the island nation had to pay $6.9 million for the shipment. The performance bond placed by China's Qingdao Seaweed Biotech Group was also taken back, and the Chinese supplier is seeking another $8 million as compensation for losses incurred as part of the deal. If not, the Chinese supplier wants a definite answer on the agreement. At a time when Sri Lanka was struggling to maintain its foreign reserves, it simply lost $6.9 million. Recently, Sri Lanka's Auditor General produced a report on the fertilizer agreement and made some startling revelations. Number 1. There was no confirmation as to whether the Hippo Spirit was actually transporting fertilizer. Number 2. Sri Lanka was not prepared to clear and unload the fertilizer shipment. Number 3. The Chinese supplier had not even appointed an agent for the clearing process. Number 4. Incorrect log entry with respect to the departure date of the vessel. Number 5. Shipping the fertilizer without an import license from the Director General of Agriculture and a clearance certificate. Number 6. Violation of agreement, as the Chinese supplier had shipped the fertilizer ahead of opening a letter of credit. Number 7. disconnecting the ship's tracking system and heading towards Africa. Based on these findings, the Auditor General's report reveals that the payment is in fact questionable. The Auditor General has recommended that the Chinese supplier be blacklisted and those responsible be prosecuted and the losses incurred by the government be recovered from them. Let's now take a look at what the former and present subject ministers have to say.
I had to appear for Gotabaya Rajapaksa, but I cannot be held responsible for shipment of contaminated Chinese fertilizer. It does not relate to me. I did not say this before, but I did not speak of this because Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the president at the time. As the agriculture minister at the time, I was never involved in the process. It was operated by a separate secretary and tender board.
The foreign minister has appointed a committee to solve the matter diplomatically. Discussions are taking place with the ambassador as well. They have called for a review on the matter. However, we have been notified that it came out unilaterally from the Auditor General's department.
$6.9 million is approximately 24 billion rupees. So what are those responsible individuals saying about the loss of public funds? Farmers are suffering without fertilizer for their fields. The expected harvest for the Yalla season has dropped by 50%. Sri Lanka is also facing a severe food crisis. Shouldn't those responsible for this disaster be identified rather than passing the ball to each other to save themselves?
Actress Damitha Beratni was arrested by the Colombo North Crimes Division this evening at Diatuina in Battaramulla. Sri Lanka police said that she was arrested for unlawfully entering the president's office during the recent protests in July 2022. Police added that she will be handed over to the Fort Police for further investigations, and actress Damitha Beratni is expected to be produced in court tomorrow. This news once again. Actress Damitha Beratni was arrested by the Colombo North Crimes Division this evening at Diatuina in Battaramulla. Sri Lanka police said that she was arrested for unlawfully entering the president's office during the recent protest in July 2022. Police added that she will be handed over to the Fort Police for further investigations, and actress Damitha Beratni is expected to be produced in court tomorrow.
Newsfirst, main sponsor.
Anka ege arakshita itigini petti. Surya gini petti.
Medha undertook another drinking water project today in a remote part of Nuwara.
Medha placed the foundation stone to construct a water purification system at the Silver Candy Tamil Vidyalam, which is located in Valapane, Nuwara. The Silver Candy Tamil Vidyalam is located in a remote area of the Nuwara district, and almost all students here are from families that depend on tea plantations for their survival. The main issue identified at the Silver Candy Tamil Vidyalam, which educates approximately 500 students, is the lack of access to clean drinking water. This in turn has posed serious health challenges to the teachers and students alike. The Medha door-to-door campaign conducted in 2020 came across this school and experienced the harsh conditions faced by the students and teachers at this institution. Medha stepped up to construct a water purification system at the Silver Candy Tamil Vidyalam with the meritorious contribution made by the Airline Pilots Guild of Sri Lanka.
News First with the people.
Leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, shed light on the severity of malnutrition in Sri Lanka for a second day during today's adjournment debate in Parliament.
ඩොලර් මිලියන 6.9ක් නොසැපයූ
A payment of $6.9 million was made to a consignment of fertilizer that was never received. By today, children at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital cannot be fed. We heard a story from Valigama where 4 boys who were starving were made to kneel down by the mayor or another official for eating food at a certain function. This is the true state of our nation. 1 year ago, the World Food Programme had warned the government of a possible food security issue and had requested the government to allow them to conduct a survey, because without such a ground-level survey, the World Food Programme cannot supply the country. I don't know if you are aware, but that survey has been purposely put on hold for 12 months. It was finally approved earlier this year. We are witnessing the consequences of that delay. A food crisis occurred due to the disruptions caused to international food supply. We were unable to mobilize the WFP's aid program at the inception of this crisis. The incumbent president, when functioning as the Prime Minister, requested us to help. By today, we have donated medical equipment and medicine worth 150 million rupees to 50 state hospitals through our Breath of Fresh Air from the opposition program. We do not need to be presidents, prime ministers, ministers, state ministers or deputy ministers. If you think opposition leaders are not required by Mr. Rajapaksa, you can make a decision. I have no objections.
විපක්ෂ නායකවරු ඕන නැත්නම් අපේ මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමනි ඔබතුමාලට තීන්දුවක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. විපක්ෂ නායකයෝ ඕන නැත්නම් ඔබතුමාලා තීන්දුවක් ගන්න. මට ගැටලුවක් නැහැ.
The Occupy Go-Face protesters engaged in a silent protest opposite Diyatuyana today, and the protest themed the Black Hour was organized demanding an end to the suppression of the people. It is also called for the immediate resignation of the government that failed to provide relief to the people. The protesters were seen holding torches and placards and also recited a pledge in the form of a poem.
ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨවාදී සංවිධාන වලට භාග. ඒ නවකතාව සිංහලට පරිවර්තනය කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් අවුරුදු ගණනාවක්.
ඒ නිසා ඔවුන් සිතන්නේ ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨන්ට ලොකු ගුරු ඇදබාන්න බෑ.
The World Food Programme says that it has received a third of its emergency appeal for $63 million to provide humanitarian assistance to Sri Lanka.
To date, the World Food Programme has received a total of $21.35 million from the governments of Australia, Italy, Japan, New Zealand, Norway and Switzerland, as well as from the UN Central Emergency Response Fund, private sector partners and multilateral donors. The World Food Programme's economic crisis response aims to reach a total of 3.4 million people across 3 main activities. 1. Unconditional food assistance through cash or in-kind. 2. School meals. And 3. Nutrition support. Throughout August, the World Food Programme reached a total of 31,724 people with cash assistance, with a further 57,528 in progress through government social protection systems. WFP has procured 1,475 metric tons of rice and 755 metric tons of iron-fortified rice to support 1 million children with school meals for 3 months. The first consignment of rice is expected to arrive in September. This assistance will directly support school children through the government's National School Meals Programme.
We have more news in store for you, but first a quick commercial break. Stay tuned.
නිවෙස පුරා ගලන මේ සතුට සුරක්ෂිත කරන්නේ Islam Insight. Islam ජීවයයි ජලයයි ජීවිතේ.
Still in news here at home, Minister of Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that he met with the members of the committee appointed to revise tariff rates on rooftop solar.
Accordingly, the minister said that the committee members have held meetings with its stakeholders and plans are underway to introduce the new tariffs by next week. The minister added that the committee members will consider the economic factors, least cost generation and the financial capabilities of the CEB in revising tariffs.
Are you a person who only obeys traffic rules at the sight of a police officer? Here's a warning from Sri Lanka Police.
The People's Police.
The Sri Lanka Police Closed Circuit Television, or the CCTV division, was established during the period of the conflict. CCTVs cover the entire Colombo district. The CCTV division that was officially established in 2010 was instrumental in tracing suspects responsible for VIP assassinations, anti-government activities and other crimes. This division also contributes to trace traffic offenders daily. A notable feature of this division is the CCTV mobile unit.
Police නිලධාරීන්ට ගෝචර සීමාවන් තියෙනවා. Traffic violation.
There are certain restrictions for police officers. When a person commits a traffic offence, the police officer cannot check for other offences happening behind him. In addition, officers cannot be deployed 24/7. That is why we adopted electronic devices, and the most used is CCTV.
සඳහා උපයෝගී කරගන්න. ඒකට තියෙන කදිම උදාහරණයක් තමයි සමීප රූප ආවේක්ෂණ ක්‍රියාව.
The People's Police.
The day 3 of the 4th edition of the Divi Savio program, seeking to support the most impoverished communities in Sri Lanka, commenced centering the Colombo district today. The program is supported by LOLC Holdings.
Essential relief packages were distributed to families at the Jayasekara Ramaya in Kuppiyavatta. The program aims to provide nutritious meals to low-income earners in Sri Lanka. The Divi Savio program identified families that need relief and delivers relief packages to them.
Sri Lanka pulled off a stunning win in their Asia Cup encounter against India yesterday, all but securing a berth in the Asia Cup final. And India are currently the rank 1 T20 team in the world.
Played in Dubai, Sri Lanka skipper Dasun Shanaka won the toss and invited India to bat first. Although Indian captain Rohit Sharma and Lokesh Rahul took to the field to open the batting for India, their opening stand was limited to 11 runs when Mahesh Theekshana dismissed Lokesh Rahul for 6 runs. A peach from pacer Dilshan Madhushanka thereafter bowled Virat Kohli for a duck. Reeling at 13 runs for 2 wickets, skipper Rohit Sharma led from the front to stabilise the Indian innings with a brilliant 72 runs of 41 balls, partnering Surya Kumar Yadav to put up a 97-run stand for the 3rd wicket. Despite some expensive overs in the middle of the innings, Dasun Shanaka and other bowlers managed to restrict the Indians to 173 runs. Dilshan Madhushanka was the pick of the bowlers with 3 wickets. Chasing a total of 174 for victory, Sri Lankan openers Pathum Nissanka and Kusal Mendis laid a platform for victory with a 97-run opening stand. It was the highest opening wicket stand by Sri Lanka against India in T20s. Pathum Nissanka was dismissed for 52 after recording his 6th half-century in T20s. India fought back with its spinners to dismiss Charith Asalanka and Danushka Gunatilaka for a duck and 1 run respectively, setting up an intense finale. However, Bhanuka Rajapaksa and Dasun Shanaka scored 25 and 33 runs respectively to guide Sri Lanka to victory with 1 ball to spare. The win over India cemented Sri Lanka's place at the top of the Super 4 points table. Sri Lanka and Pakistan will qualify for Sunday's final if Pakistan defeat Afghanistan in their encounter today. India's hopes of securing a place in the final further diminished after yesterday, with their fate placed in the hands of Pakistan. India will qualify for the final if Pakistan lose both their ties and India secure a win over Afghanistan with a high net run rate.
Did you expect such a defeat from Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka were not in the favourites lists earlier.
Every team who's here, I think they're quality teams. I think I don't know if you are doubting Sri Lanka to not play well.
No, they were saying that they are not the favorites in the...
Who was saying?
No, normally on the Indian media.
I don't believe in favorites and underdogs and all of that. I mean, all the teams that are playing here are quality teams, and you have to play your best cricket to win games. It's very simple, and we don't take any opposition lightly, whether it's any team. I don't want to take names, but any teams that we play, we want to go out there and we want to do our best.
ඒක කැප්ටන් ගෙන් අහන්න මොකද මට එන්න කිව්වේ ටීම් මැනේජ්මන්ට් එකෙන් කැප්ටන් ගෙන් අහන්න. ඒක මම දන්නේ කැප්ටන් ගෙන් මොකද මම ආයේ මෙතනට රිප්‍රසන්ට් කරන ටීම් එක. අපි දැනගත්ත 170ට ඉන්දියා.
If we manage to keep India at 170, we had a chance of winning. This is our fourth straight win chasing a target. We believe we can do it. Our main factor was the Kusal Mendis and Pathum Nissanka partnership.
අපේ හැමතිස්සෙම මේ කුසල් මෙන්ඩිස්ගේ පැතුම් නිසංකගේ ඕපන් පාර්ට්නර්ෂිප් එක තමයි.
And with that, wrap up news for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. You take care. Stay safe. Good night.